In the history of professional football, we've seen plenty of matchups in which a team had almost no chance of winning and managed to pull an upset. The 2-11 Dolphins beat the 12-1 Patriots on Monday night in 2004, the 2003 Cardinals knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs while in contention for the number 1 overall draft pick, and the 2018 Washington Valor won the Arena Bowl despite finishing 2-10 in the regular season. But those games were technically winnable. It wasn't impossible for those teams to come away with a victory. In 1959, though, a team won a game they literally could not win. The probability of them coming away with a victory was 0, and they won. Get your passports ready and bring a jacket. We're going to Canada because honestly, y'all gotta hear the story of the 1959 Saskatchewan Roughriders at Winnipeg Blue Bombers game. The win that couldn't happen. The story of this game revolves around QB Frank Tripucka. A star QB at Notre Dame, Tripucka was the Eagles' first-round choice of the 1949 NFL Draft before being flipped to the Cardinals. By 1953, Tripucka had bottomed out of the NFL and decided to try his luck up north with the Saskatchewan Roughriders of the Western Interprovincial Football Union, now the Western Conference. This was the year before the formation of the CFL. He found success under center and, led by head coach Frank Filchock, guided the Roughriders to 4 straight second-place finishes from 1953 to 1956. The playoff formats back then were a little bonkers. That's beyond the scope of this video. In 1957, though, the team went 3-12-1 and fired Filchock after the season, replacing him with George Turlop. The 1958 Roughies finished 3rd and lost their playoff series. Yes, it was a series, like I said, beyond the scope of this video. This led fans to become annoyed at the lack of greater success. Tripucka took the brunt of the criticism as fans believed a younger, more mobile QB would bring them the success they desired. The 30-year-old Tripucka took these words and desired a trade, which he got. He was traded to the Ottawa Roughriders, 2 words, not 1, where he struggled. Saskatchewan, on the other hand, was downright putrid and fired Coach Turlop after an 0-9 start. Who did they replace him with? None other than Frank Tripucka himself. Weirdly, he was now the head coach of the Roughriders, and he actually managed to get a win in his 2nd game. Little did anybody know there would soon be a gigantic mess. On October 19th, in the 14th game of the season, the BC Lions clobbered the Roughies 45-6. The clobbering was not just limited to the score, however. All 3 QBs went out with injuries. Starter Don Allard separated his shoulder, backup Ron Adam re-aggravated an ankle injury suffered in August, and third stringer Jack Ernest suffered a nasty gash that left him hospitalized. Now the Roughies were without a QB and had to scramble. They waived QB Bob Broadhead the prior week and attempted to bring him back, but he had gone back home to the United States. The Roughies wanted to close up shop for the remaining 2 games, but they had league obligations to fulfill and season ticket holders to appease. They had a home game upcoming against Edmonton, followed by their season finale at Winnipeg 2 days afterward, teams who had clobbered them 3 times each. With a major deadline approaching fast, team president Sam Taylor made a desperation move. Start Frank Tripucka. This would have been okay under regular circumstances. Player coaches weren't all too uncommon at the time. But the CFL was no ordinary league, and it caused an extraordinary problem. The CFL is supposed to be Canadian, but the operators knew that if given the chance, teams would opt for almost exclusively American rosters. They introduced the import system to prevent this. At the time, teams were limited to 12 players known as imports, basically non-Canadians. The problem for the Roughies was that they already had 12 imports, and, to pile on, import movement was frozen after a team's 13th game. Thus, if the Roughies played Tripucka, they would be fielding an ineligible player and have to forfeit. It didn't really matter much to anybody, save for Calgary Stampeders president Edward H. Laborde, who decided to write a ranting letter to the CFL's president, complaining about how doing so would destroy the dignity of the game. I submit the 2020 Broncos Saints game as evidence to the contrary. Tripucka would play, the other teams would get a free win, and everybody would benefit from a better game since more people would come out to see the old flinger again. The first game was against Edmonton, who in their 3 prior games had outscored the Roughies a combined 131-15. Somehow, the Roughies managed to keep it close and led 19-17 with under a minute to play. However, Trapuka got too aggressive near the goal line and threw a pick. Edmonton managed to get into field goal range and won the game 20-19, though it was officially awarded a 2-0 forfeit victory. Trapuka was upset at himself after the game, lamenting that he would have played it safer had he been on the sidelines instead of under center. Then came the second game 2 days later at Winnipeg Stadium. The Roughies were outscored 129-36 in their 3 prior outings against Bud Branch Bombers, so perhaps they would fare just a tad better. After falling to a 13-0 first quarter deficit, the Roughies erupted with 23 in the second and never looked back. Trapuka was 17 of 29 for 208 yards, but it was import running back Ferd Burkett who erupted with 108 yards and 5 TDs on the ground to lead the Roughies to a stunning 37-30 win. Unfortunately, like with the prior game, it was officially designated a 2-0 forfeit victory for the Bombers. Oddly enough, even though it was officially a 2-0 game, every stat, including Burkett's 5 TDs, went in the official record books. The CFL still has rules on import players, but they've been relaxed to prevent this situation from ever happening again. As for the rest of this story, Saskatchewan's last place finish spelled the end for Trapuka in Canada, but he was far from done with his professional football career. He found a job as the starting quarterback for the upstart AFL's Denver Broncos in 1960, reuniting with Coach Phil Chalk. There, he started for 3 years, became the first American QB to throw for 3,000 yards in a season, beating Johnny Unitas to the punch by 1 day, and ended up with his number 18 retired by the team. He gave Peyton Manning his blessing to wear it in 2012. His final spot was back with Saskatchewan as a backup in 1963, before he announced his retirement after 15 seasons of professional football. The story of this game is mostly the story of Frank Trapuka finding himself back where he felt unloved, thrust into a situation thought impossible, and managing to find success. He guided the team to their only official win as head coach, then managed to play QB and fulfill his job as head coach in 2 games against the best teams in the West and succeeded far beyond anybody's expectations, even beating the defending Grey Cup champions on their home field 2 days after a heartbreaking defeat. This is the ultimate example of not going down without a fight, not giving up even if it literally won't change the end result, resiliency in the face of adversity, and what you can find when you go on an odyssey through oddities. And that's why y'all had to hear the story of the win that couldn't happen. Thank you for listening. Hey, hope you enjoyed this second episode of Y'all Gotta Hear the Story of. Feel free to subscribe to find out when the next episode's coming. If you want to join me for sports talk live every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the link is in the description. And if you want to check out my podcast, which I do every Friday, the link is also in the description. Hopefully you'll check out both of them. I enjoy them. Hopefully you will too. So until next time, bye-bye.